All right. So my name is Brandon Middleton. I'm the head of education at Replit. Clearly not the head of AV standing up here, but this talk is about human potential's big moment. This was about 11 years ago. I stand in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the first person to hip-hop rap a commencement speech. I did the evening and weekend MBA program. I graduated in 2015. If you want to hear the rap, come meet me outside. Maybe I still remember it after 11 or 12 years. This talk is about how we can shift how we do education and AI literacy in classrooms, in research, in higher ed and academia. And if you have thoughts and questions and commentary about this topic, we're in an experimentation phase. There's lots of trials to try and things to succeed and fail at. So I'll be off stage trying to meet as many of you who are interested in this topic. All right. I deeply believe in the power of education. I've taught outside of my regular job at Amazon and at Microsoft and at other places. And at Replit, I actually got the opportunity to full-time focus on what I've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years. So I get to focus on universities and colleges and K through 12 and nonprofits that are focusing on trying to bring AI literacy into like a practical and tactical realm. So I'll talk a lot about the work that we're doing. I see some people that I've worked with in the audience already, so it's gonna be a fun time here. All right, let's blast off and go. All right, so I'm gonna try to make this talk like also a demonstration of how you build an end-to-end application using a platform like Replit that has Agentic AI embedded inside of it. Hands up if you've ever used agents or Agentic AI to build anything. Okay, almost the whole room, hands go up. If you built something today, hands up. All right, so if you go to this actual URL here, I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid that we'll pop out again, but there's an app that I created this morning. All right, so if you click that URL, it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And if you click that wall, this button here, there is a picture of all of our new joiners here. I used Replit Agent to actually, let's see, to actually build this application out. Man, this is killing me. So if you would like to leave a message, or if you would like to literally participate in this scroll wheel, scroll wall, this is an example of something that's using Agentic AI and agents in order to build. It accepts your images or your messages, and then it will put this scroll wall together in the back that you'll be able to see. All right. All right, so I'm gonna go there. And it looks like you can see all of you guys' images popping up on the screen there. Great job and great to meet everybody virtually. Is this the first like live demo demonstration that you guys have seen today? No? Okay, you've seen a little bit more. Well, keep doing this if you like. Put images, put comments and commentary, but this is one example of Agentic AI like at work. All right, so let's go back to presentation here and keep going. All right, so I've taught at the Stanford Design School. I teach a class every spring quarter called Redesigning Finance. And I've had students like joke to me about kind of the state of higher education, and us calling it that as educators because of the price of the tuition and not necessarily how fun it is to be in class or the quality of the content or the differentiation between being in class or going to YouTube or going somewhere else to learn the same kind of information. So there's a lot of truth in jest sometimes. You know, you get students to rib you and give you a sense of like, man, the return on investment, as I believe in the American dream to get me a job and to do everything that people have told me to do, that's starting to wane a little bit. If you've heard some of that sentiment from students, or if you feel a little bit like that yourself, give me a hand wave. There's a few people who are like, man, it's tougher to get a job, or it's tougher to believe in the status quo these days. So I feel like the reason that some of these jokes work is because there's some truth to this, right? We need to actually think about how exactly it is we're going to reimagine education as a whole. What is it for? How do we do it? And how do we build the bridge from higher ed, higher institution of academia into kind of the workforce? Workforce development is a little bit of what I focus on at the K through 12 level, all the way through college and then into early career at Replit. All right. So what we did to try to talk to people in a ground up fashion is go on what we're calling an AI literacy tour. So I've been to Chicago this summer, where I'm from, born and raised. I got a 708 number in Michael Jordan shoes. That's all I got left from Chicago. I've been in the Bay Area for like 21 years now. We've been to Chicago, we've been to New York, we've been to Los Angeles, we've been to Atlanta. We're here in the Bay Area talking to people about what it feels like to be a student at this time, what it feels like to be a teacher, receiving mandates from the top and trying to like translate AI literacy into something meaningful for yourself and then for your students and community. And what we're trying to move towards is an answer to try to reimagine what education actually looks and feels like, because in certain places, I think that it is for sure failing. All right. All right. So the education system as it currently exists was actually designed pretty well. It was designed hundreds of years ago for a world that today is not really existent. Information itself used to be scarce, so you needed to come to a university in order to actually receive it from a professor who was the kind of the end all and be all. You come to receive and retrieve that information from your professor. The knowledge was locked up in libraries, in laboratories, in lecture halls, and the world like remembered the answer and used the answer that you were receiving. It was often the evidence of your learning if you knew the actual answer, which is not true today. Like you can have a lot of book knowledge and no street smarts. You can have a lot of things that you've observed, but maybe that is all misinformation or disinformation. So today, information is not scarce, literally everywhere. Answers are abundant, and increasingly the intelligence itself is becoming pervasive and abundant as well. So how do we move into an intelligence age where the cost of the models are dropping, but the intelligence of the models is actually getting really, really good? How do we, Replit, and how do we as an industry within education think about how to wield this intelligence moving forward for technology and non-technical people who are going to be using these platforms? So this massive like civilization level shift creates a big like uncomfortable question for the institution of higher ed. If we were designing college for today, like summer of 2026, and we could start with a blank canvas and a blank sheet of paper, how exactly would we go about doing that? Would we still organize everything around lectures in libraries, and would we create semesters that are 16 weeks long still, or would we make things shorter? Will we count attendance? Does that matter in the future of education? Closed book recall and rote memorization of things on final exams, is that a thing that we need to hold on to or something that we should throw away? We've confused time served in college institutions with learning, right? We've confused the credentials with a student's capability to actually perform. And sometimes we've confused sorting students throughout 4 or 5 years with actually educating them. So college has become this extraordinarily expensive sorting system, and we sort by admissions. Sometimes we sort by grades and departments. Sometimes we're sorting by the actual institution that person or those people went to. And then the result of it at the end of 4 or 5 years, we call merit. And we literally like will hire or not hire on the basis of that sometimes. So I think a lot about that at Replit, and what we've been doing on this AI literacy tour or campaign across these 5 different cities is literally asking people from preschool teachers, lady in the back is a preschool teacher, all the way up through researchers and professors at R1, Tier 1 universities, like what's happening? How can we incrementally choose small experiments and things to peel off and try that might be useful in defining what education is going to look like in the future? So in this session, like this is me in the community in East Palo Alto. I live in Palo Alto and do a lot of community work in East Palo Alto. And we had a session of 7-year-olds in the room all the way up to elders, 77-year-olds in the room. And we were talking about the issues of resource allocation and different things that plague the city of East Palo Alto. And I'm using these sticky notes to put things on paper. I'm using my phone and applications to actually capture the things that the 7- and 8-year-olds are telling me, as well as the things that the 75- and 76-year-olds are telling me. And I'm using Replit as a platform to basically, like you're doing with your photos, upload that to an application and think with AI as a partner and show the community exactly how easy it is to do, even though they themselves didn't identify as computer scientists and engineers. All right, so meanwhile, the work world, outside of the community aspect, is sending us some pretty staunch messages. And a couple of stats for you. At the beginning of this year, 2026, unemployment amongst young, recent college graduates was about 5.7%, so just under 6%. More strikingly, about 41.5% were underemployed, meaning that I might have graduated from a really fancy school, but I might be working in something that's really underneath my intellectual capability or even my interest, which is also a problem. So we have that to deal with. This doesn't mean that the college institution in and of itself doesn't have any value. It means that the connection between education, student capability, and opportunity is currently under strain, and we need to solve for that. The World Economic Forum reports that nearly 40% of workers' current skills are expected to change between this year and 2030, so that if you had 100 people representing every of the 8 billion people on Earth, 59 out of those 100 people would literally have to shift and reskill and repivot within the next 4 years. So that's how much change we have to think about. And that's why I hold everything with a really loose grip, because everything in AI changes so quickly. All right, so if the global workforce is going to change and a diploma can't be the finish line, what do we do? Maybe that diploma is not even like the reliable map that we should be using in the future as we rebuild this thing. So the real advantage, as I've seen it, has come from the ability to actually learn, the ability to unlearn, and the ability to pick things back up and relearn them as I move forward. I graduated from UIUC as an electrical engineer. I came out to the Bay to work at Cisco Systems as a networking software engineer. And I went to Haas Business School and graduated in 2015. I started to put down a lot of my technical skills in terms of programming, in terms of product management that I used to do. But these days, I left AWS after 6 years to join Replit as the head of education. I'm actually picking back up some of those skills of product management, some of those skills within the EPD triangle of design and engineering and product management in order to build experiences for people that are both technical and non-technical as we move forward. So relearning, unlearning, and learning to learn is a really core skill if you're going to be a contributor to this education of the 21st and 22nd century. All right, so AI is not the next EdTech gadget. I see AI a little bit differently than I see the calculator, for example, a little bit different than like a Google search engine from 2003 and 2004. I see it as not only a way to automate things like grading or summarization of papers that you might receive as a professor, or a way to generate lesson plans, but AI gives us, I think, a once-in-a-century opportunity to actually rebuild education around human potential. So I think each of us have an innate passion, desire, skill to be able to do and deliver something to the rest of the 8+ billion of us on this planet. And I think we can use vibe coding and use agentic AI in order to help humans achieve peak performance in their fullest potential moving forward. For the first time in history, I think imagining agentic assistants and personal tutors is a real thing that can be achieved and grasped within the next couple of years. All right, so this is a picture of me in the community again. This is, if you're not familiar, a guy who was signed to a record label for 10 years 5 years ago, he got released from that initial deal where he did 3 albums, Grammy, won a Grammy and all of that. He came to the Replit office asking not so much about agentic AI and technical terms, but he launched out as an entrepreneur and said, hey, I want to run a record label and do a lot of things that plagued me when I was part of the larger music industry. Things like revenue recognition for the amount of royalties I should receive when I stream my music across all of the different platforms like Spotify or YouTube Music. You get fractions and fractions of pennies for doing that, and he would actually go about trying to audit the money that he would receive. And the runaround that he described and the errors and all of the things that were basically swept under the rug that most other artists weren't doing, he thinks is a big opportunity. So he's building a new record label and using vibe coding, even though he hasn't really got that computer science and that technical background, in order to reimagine things in the music industry. Even though he's not part of an actual university right now, this also falls underneath the umbrella of education in my scope at Replit. Music education, there's business education, there's technology education. So if you've got thoughts around things that typically will sit outside of the university, I'm happy to talk with you guys one-to-one about that as well as I leave the stage. All right. So let's talk about this personal tutor for every learner. Not only for like wealthy individuals, like a lot of folks that are neighbors of mine in Palo Alto will send their kids to Saturday school, or they get out of school at 3 o'clock and they're not home until 6 o'clock because they've got these personalized tutors for STEM subjects and for other things. But I think that students whose parents know how to navigate the system, that's pretty solved. But for the ones that are not confident to raise that hand in a crowded lecture hall, it's cool to think about how we can use agentic AI to build personal tutors that will be available 24 hours a day, 2 a.m. when that student who's too shy to raise their hand in lecture hall needs a question answered. Students who need an explanation in an alternative way. Maybe you're a visual and not auditory learner. Maybe you need, or maybe you perform well in oral exams versus taking written timed exams. There's lots of examples of students that need accommodations and have them in order to learn at their best. And the ability to personalize education without any embarrassment, exhaustion, or judgment on behalf of the student and the teacher, who sometimes is in a one-to-many type of forum, is something that we think a lot about at Replit. Multilingual support is something that in the Bay Area, like I lived in Chicago, so I heard a little bit of Spanish, but mostly English when I came out of Illinois and towards California. When I arrived here, like the concept of pretty much everybody speaking at least like 2 languages, I felt like a total slacker for the first several years of my life. If you speak more than 1 language, give me a hands up. So I am underachieving all of you essentially by only speaking English. But I think agentic AI can really help with that too. Like you can speak into Replit as a platform, English just as well as you can do French or Spanish or any other of your native tongues, and then have that translated in apps that you build to other people who speak different languages on the other side of that interaction. All right. So I don't see what we're talking about as replacing teachers. I think the teachers themselves have really important work to do, so that we're talking about expanding the reach of what one individual is able to do for a classroom of sometimes 15, sometimes 50, sometimes 100 people at a time. So when the teacher becomes less of a broadcaster and more of a designer and a coach and a mentor, a critic and a community builder, I think the students have a lot of room to thrive and a lot of room to grow into leadership and ownership as they move towards what's next for them. And AI can definitely deliver the information, but what the teacher needs to do and why that matters is a very personal kind of that care, that concern, that thing that is intangible a lot of the times, that belief that the teacher has in that student that will allow them to stay up that extra couple of hours and complete something or have pride in the work that they turn in as a result of the seeds that were planted in them by that teacher. All right. So this is my future. I've got 3 startups, one age 14, one age 10, and one age 7. Basically, at the end of every pay cycle, I like empty out my wallet to do things that make them happy. And I think a lot about when I get out of bed, I'm excited to contribute to this future because I know that 4 years from now, the oldest startup is going to go into college. And in 2030, who knows like what learning, what education, what like credentialing, what college, what work even will be. If you have ideas about this and you feel like you know what's going to happen in 2030, please see me immediately after this presentation. So this is special to me in that I think the experimentation window that we have is about a year and a half, maybe 2 years to try all of these things and see what sticks and see what does not stick. We have a program that we run at Replit called our Faculty Fellows Program. I see one person in the audience that's a part of Dr. Chin. Wave at everybody. We do a monthly webinar where people who have said yes to experimentation use a Replit platform to build out experiences and to build out things, and they put them in front of students or they use them in their research and then report back to a cohort that's now about 75 teachers large. And we talk through what worked, what didn't work, and we try to share that information in community so that the next person who has yet to dip their toe in the water feels a little bit more comfortable and confident doing that on the back of that shared experience. So I'm hoping that my kids see enough at home and are able to learn enough from these communities that are building to be confident to experiment themselves as they go into high school and into college. All right. So let me show you the Replit interface. If you've seen Replit itself before, raise your hand. Okay. Can I get one volunteer to explain what Replit is to somebody that's never used it before? One volunteer from the crowd. Go ahead, in the black shirt. Explain what Replit is for someone who's never used it. Oh, who has never used it? Okay, so you are not the person to answer. Right here in the blue shirt, yes. Love that. So he said from idea to built AI application without the requirement of knowing much about the technology underneath. So since you already gave you a hat, I'm gonna give you this to give to somebody else. Thank you, sir. Yeah, you guys can mob him after. But the actual like Replit interface, if I come out of here and let's see. Okay, here. All right, so this is like the Replit interface. I'm gonna come over here. All right, so you get a prompt box like this, which is a very, natural. I've done this with ChatGPT. I've done this with Claude before. And essentially, if you click import here on the actual screen, if you want to start from something that you've already been building in another place, you can import work from other places into Replit. If you want to check the status of other projects that you've been working on, as you continue to build out things in Replit, you'll get a full page of all of the different things that you've done. I built this slide presentation in Replit, as you guys know. Talk about integrations with other pieces of technology that you probably interact with on a day-to-day basis. All of the different connectors that we have are personal and enterprise types of connectors. So I personally use a lot of Dropbox and Discord and Slack and Google Drive. If I scroll all the way down, there are 511 different integrations that you can be prompting, and you can say, hey, Replit, go grab my Google Drive, my Dropbox, and my Databricks, and my Google Sheets, for example, and I want to make an application that does X, Y, Z. So it's a lot more fun to connect into all of these applications before you build the thing that you want to build out. All right. Let's go to back here, back home. So the artifact and the output types, you see website here, mobile app, design, games. We built that photo app in a few minutes here. So these are all the different kinds of artifacts and expressions that you can put into this prompt box and kind of steer the model towards. So if you know you want to build a slide deck, just click the slide deck button. If you know you want to build a mobile app, iOS, Android, click the mobile app button, and that'll steer Replit in the direction that's necessary in order for you to start that back and forth interaction. On the bottom left here, there's a learn and a documentation button where we've spent a good amount of time putting video content together to take people from 0 to 100 and then from 100 a little bit further. If you are not familiar with vibe coding, you're not familiar with like building with AI, the documentation in some of these learn apps are really helpful for that. Okay. And coming back here, once you've actually kicked off an actual work session, you can see that there's a number of modes. So there's light mode here, which allows you to ask very basic questions like, hey, can you change the color, like the background color of my slides from black to orange? Can you change the text of this slide to say this instead of that? That's what light mode is for. Economy mode is like the default middle of the road, like reasoning, intelligence. And then when you want to do things that are really, really ambitious, you can go to power mode. And for each of these, you've got the ability to kind of click into these and select either closed models or open models, depending on the level of work that you're trying to do. So model choice and the ability to actually choose the right model for the right thing that you're asking Replit to do is part of the experience here. All right. So that's a little bit about the Replit platform itself. Let's check on our application here and see if we've got any new faces. All right. Dr. Chen, you're looking good there. Love to see you guys doing that. All right. Let's keep going with the actual presentation itself. Become full screen mode here. Present. Okay. All right. So let's talk about responsible AI use and like how we can do assessment a little bit differently. So we have to change the kinds of things that we value. I think testing is pretty dead at this point. In my class, Redesigning Finance, I usually am asking students to YouTube record explanations 5 to 7 minutes at a time of them grappling with the topic in finance that we're discussing. So one of the themes from last year's class was, how do you deal with catastrophes like the LA wildfires that happened a couple years ago? If you are trying to redesign reinsurance and the insurance industry and improve the claimant's experience for the next fire that happens in LA or the next flood that happens in Florida, how do you actually go about designing something at the claimant level, at the insurer level, at the reinsurer level, and have students literally build stuff and then actually defend what they've built synchronously. So unless they've learned how to master deep faking, they're putting like the work into actually thinking through it and putting a prototype and their video next to it as a submission. So I think we should stop designing assessments around stuff that machines can do well and start designing with the human being in mind. And each human being actually has different capabilities. So I, in my own grading, have done some adaptive type of work. It's all group work, but we look at the students' grade in school, so freshmen through master's students. We look at the students' background in engineering versus I'm a brand new coder or a brand new person to technology. And we grade across things like the fidelity of the design that they put forward, the collaboration that they've showed within the group as measured by how their teammates are voting and not necessarily how we the teachers and we the TAs look at them. So these are a couple of ideas about how to change assessment in terms of moving away from exams or pop quizzes and more towards experiential and building. All right, taking away judgment, curiosity, care, originality, and collaboration. Like if we remove these things and they're already absent from the system, I don't think we're setting ourselves up for success. So let's lean into empathy. Let's lean into the ability to frame problems, worthwhile questions to ask, get high points, even if you don't have the answers to them necessarily in the classes that I've been teaching over the last year or two. All right. All right, the question should no longer be, did the student use AI? But better questions that we should be asking ourselves as educators are, did the student actually think? Did the student verify the work that they put forward? Did they cite sources, say where it came from? Did the student improve the work? Did the student explain the decisions and the choices that they made in order to get to the output that they actually came to? Can the student defend the conclusion? And can the student tell us where the machine and the machinery actually got it wrong? They're using their own judgment, they're using their own expertise in a particular area to make judgments about what the machine said. So imagine this oral defense after every major individual or group project. Imagine students submitting not only one final answer, but a tracked record of their reasoning. I built a system inside of Replit that allows students to actually reflect on lectures, submit the actual assignments, and then for them to be able to track, again, the space between two lectures, you might have learned a lot. The space between one exam and the next exam, you might have learned a lot. And the traditional system that we live in doesn't necessarily capture those moments. So we've got the ability to build new software and new artifacts that will help us to actually capture some of that. All right. Let's keep moving here. This is a picture of a hackathon. This is an interesting story because I didn't do particularly well in molecular and cellular biology and chemistry or any of the things that this hackathon in San Francisco was about. But the students used the Replit platform in order to find biomarkers, in order to do things around drug discovery, to do some life sciences innovation. And my commentary to them as a judge, one of the many judges, was about how deeply they thought about the solution, how many people they surveyed, their process, a little bit more than my domain expertise. And I think all of us, even if we don't go deep into a particular area or domain, can offer kind of our lived experience and our perspective to make the stuff that students are building a little bit better. All right, this is the hand of a high school student in Chicago, 15 years old, named Jack. He comes to school from 25, 30 miles outside of where the school is actually at. And the principal of Holy Trinity High School gave students access to Replit in this last spring. And Jack decided to take the school's disciplines and the things that they hold high in terms of the school principles. And he built out this system that he gave to teachers, and teachers are able to identify things that align with the school's values and principles. And literally the teachers can use their mobile phones to basically reward and say, yes, that's exactly the exemplar behavior or the care and the collaboration that we want to encourage. So they're literally changing the environment and the culture of the school. And they use the digital signage as students are walking in from the buses, into the lobby every morning, in order to show a leaderboard of sorts of the students that are getting, he put XP. So the students are getting XP in this application on the digital signage, and they're getting the positive reinforcement that they all seek. And you can use your XP that you accumulate in order to do special things in this high school. So this whole gamification and this idea of the culture of the school being improved and enhanced on the back of a vibe coding platform is something that was a really cool thing that I heard in our Chicago stop of the AI literacy tour. All right. And then when I asked Jack about how he thought about learning AI. This is how he broke it down for me. He said learning with AI, so using it as a tutor, collaborator, critic, translator. He talked to me about learning about AI. So they have one teacher in the entire school that did a deep dive, like a professional development, about a year ago, and then brought what he learned to the sophomores, juniors, and seniors in the class. And essentially, all of the stuff that the students picked up from that teacher was basically about the security, the governance, the how models and algorithms actually work. And from that, he got inspired to learn beyond AI. So he solved things around connecting his application and streaming it via Bluetooth to the digital signage system. He learned a little bit about the community impact and the issues in the community around Holy Trinity High School. So he talked to me about things that were beyond the technology in his presentation of his solution to me when I visited the school, which was interesting. So I think 3 modes to start with in terms of learning with AI, learning about AI, and then learning beyond AI. And we think about how this can like move way beyond the classroom, outside of technology, and into stuff like medicine, into stuff like justice, resourcing, and then education like we've been talking about. I think we're gonna quickly get into a philosophical and ideological conversation when it comes to AI and education, because there are certain things that technology cannot necessarily cure that we've had in society for a long time. We've had a lot of economic inequality. We've had a lot of poverty and war and different things that sometimes money's a factor in, but it's not able to be cured and solved all the way using technology. So I'm excited to be able to talk more to communities and to students about these ideological and philosophical principles in addition to the AI literacy and foundation that we're giving them. All right, so let's take a quick break. Anybody know who this guy is? This is the biggest little kid I've ever met. So in December, me and Amjad, the founder of Replit, got to teach Shaquille O'Neal how to vibe code. And this is so weird. His hands are so huge that I wanted him to type prompts. His hands are too big. He can literally not type. So I asked him to open up multiple tabs in the browser. I said, hit F5 and then just start talking. So in the span of 90 minutes, we were on set in Atlanta and we got to, we made something called Shaq GPT. So he wanted to answer every sports question. We hard-coded Charles Barkley sucks into any question regarding Charles Barkley, his TNT like broadcaster mate. We made another one called Shaq Daddy. He said, Brandon, I want to solve the loneliness epidemic in America. There's a lot of single men that need to know how to talk to women, and we need to get these men married. And so we made Shaq Daddy a pickup line generator for all of the men in America to, I'm getting some laughter back there, okay. He made another one to track all of his advertisements. You've seen Shaq on like radio and TV and movies. Like, I think Snoop Dogg might be, him and Snoop Dogg are like neck and neck by putting their brands like everywhere. So we made a way to track all of his investments to see like year to date, 2026 until now, or all time. Like, how can I understand my return on my time and my brand? And it was a lot of fun to see him be ready to use his brand and to see him be vulnerable and be okay, like not knowing things. And this is part of my vision for the AI team, the education team at Replit, to take people who have the willingness and the humility to actually try new things. And then once they've accomplished it, kind of take it to their audiences, take it back to their alma mater. Like Shaq went to, I think, Louisiana State, like LSU. So if you have ideas about how to scale this on a platform or on a person that other people are looking up to or other kids see as cool, this is actually part of my strategy in the education team. And as we get into back to school season, you'll see our team do a little bit of this with hopefully Shaq and many, many other folks that can incentivize kids to learn these principles. All right. I think we got about 15 minutes to go. What I'm going to do is pivot. I've got a couple of these slides that you can see as we move towards the back end of this. But essentially, what I want to leave you guys with is 5 commitments. And these will be things that teachers, researchers, I'm hoping that students can grok these and use these as we move forward. The first is to guarantee AI access for every student. So I'm encouraging schools from the universities that are well-resourced all the way down to, like, I think middle schools and high schools is probably an appropriate place to put this. Redesigning assessment, like we've talked about around critical thinking as opposed to this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer. I think a spectrum is worth considering. There's a lot of gray area in the life that we live today. Rewarding teaching innovation as seriously as we do research. So pretty stark contrast within academia, I think, in terms of rewarding good teaching versus rewarding research. So it'd be cool to see higher ed take more to shining a light on great teachers and people who are able to facilitate and to coach and to teach cohorts of folks 25, 50, 100 at a time into this AI literacy. That's a big opportunity for us. Replacing the one-time degree with lifelong learning. A couple years ago at Stanford, we actually, as like adjuncts, talked about kind of this on-ramp, off-ramp idea, so that once you started in the institution, you literally like are Stanford for life. And then whether you come off at 25 and come back at 30, or you come off at 45 and come back at 47, the idea that we'll have enough as human beings to like learn, and that the university context can be a community that's kind of a lifelong thing is something that I think worth discussing. The economics of it and like the exact way to implement it is still an open question, but this community that humans need is something that is already understood. And then lastly, measuring capability and mobility and not rankings as much. So I think credentialing and the ability to have students have a proof of work system as they look to graduate and find jobs for the future is a big opportunity for us. I mean, I thought in jest, like it'd be fun to have a funeral service for the resume, for the transcript, maybe for the GPA, because in the future, I think where we're gonna land is a place where you're gonna point me to your portfolio of built work and all of the proof of things that you've done in projects collaboratively and solo over time. And then as I'm sitting across the table in an interview from you, your ability to communicate, to tell the story, to show me the actual forks of options that you had and the ones that you chose and why will be the determining factor about whether I'm excited, personally to bring you onto my team or not. So, measurement, capability, and mobility over rankings, I think, is an important concept to think through. All right. In the last few minutes, what I wanted to do is give you guys a crash course in the design of an actual application. So let me come down from this. And if you wanted to check this presentation out, I will, if you go to that app that you just opened up and do like AI Foundations Deck, AI-Foundations-Deck, after you do 2084-edu.replit.app, you can get to this entire deck and I'll send it out. But with the remaining few minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit about a vibe coding, just 101 type of session. So let me play this from the start. And for all of you who had not necessarily built anything, this is gonna be like a 10-minute, just lightning fast way to think about building your first app or building your end-to-end app using Replit. All right, you guys know who I am. We talked about what Replit is. One thing I did not talk about is how you can invite multiple developers into your project so that maybe solo, myself and Dr. Chin start to make something, but then we want to invite 2 or 3 other people into it. There's an invite button on the top of the workspace that allows other developers to be prompting the same body of code as you, so that in the same way that you can build out a Google Doc with 4, 5, 6 people, you can do that building software in Replit. So that's a pretty powerful concept to think through. All right, in terms of your first prompt, I typically will start somebody who's never prompted anything with just like a personal portfolio page. So you can say, hey, make me something that'll help me to express what I've accomplished in my career. You can throw in a picture of yourself and say, Replit, go make it. After that's done, we've got the concept of abstracting all of the underlying infrastructure, the hosting, some of the database information, some of the security scanning, and all of that stuff that you need to do to go from local host on your laptop to fully deployable so that when somebody clicks the actual URL, it works for everyone. That's what the publish inside of Replit does. After we've got like a design that's up, clickable, front page with maybe our face on it, the idea that we want people to actually interact with our app requires the adding of a database. So when you guys uploaded your pictures into the app, if it was just a front-end page, I would not have been able to do that. So we had to add a database that actually takes the information. In the case of my app, I said, hey, I want to accept pictures and I want to accept text. Let's keep each of those things inside of a database. So inside of Replit, we actually built that database. And let me see if I can show. All right, there we go. If I pop out of here. All right, so the database in here, there it is. If we go to tools and we go to database here, you can see that we've got a development database for when we're testing, pre-publish, and then after we press publish on our application, we've got what's called a development or a production database as well. So all of the pictures that you guys put into our wall are put into this database, and all the comments that were associated with that are also put into this database. If I go over to all databases and go into the development database, you see that I've got a different number of rows. I've got 22 rows as opposed to the 32 or 33. So the difference between doing something locally before you publish and then publishing it, it's live to the world, development versus production. So after the database publish, adding APIs. So if we wanted to use one of those third-party services, typically you can do stuff like weather, you can do stuff like time series, stock information, you can do stuff like, you can literally pull Shopify information or pull information from any of your favorite services into your Replit app such that every time it loads up, it's pulling the information that you want presented into the actual interface. We've got plenty of APIs that you can connect with. The shortest line in this whole presentation that will allow you to do something cool is add Replit auth to my app. If you do that, you're going to add a portal basically for folks to log into that'll look a little bit like this. You can have Google, you can have Apple, you can have any of the typical ways that people log into applications. It takes like 5 or 6 words to add authentication so that users can kind of log their session information, log their pictures, log their text, and very easy to do and implement. And a couple of words on user testing and research are in here. When we get past the technical hurdle, there are students that are going to be marching towards actually experimenting in markets and seeing if app A is better than app B and actually capturing that market. So I'm excited I'll tell you this last story as we wrap. There's this student from Penn State. He had 3 colleagues, so the 4 of them visited the Replit offices. They said, hey, we graduated recently and we're kind of building the business, continuing to build the businesses that we started in college. I said, oh, that's cool. So each of you did businesses in college and attended classes. And the guy said, oh, kind of. So he said one of us out of the group for every class was like the leader. So one of us would go to that class, learn all the things, and then come back and teach the rest of the group. They would take 4 classes per semester, and each of them would be the leader. I said, what do you do with all of the extra time that you weren't in the other 3 classes? They're like, oh, we built businesses. So they built 4 different businesses in the span of 4 years. I said, oh, you make any money? He's like, yeah. I said, what, 5 figures, a couple grand? He's like, no, each of us made $1 million each over 4 years in ARR for the businesses that we started. So I started to think about, oh, maybe instead of GPA, transcript, resume, the idea that you could learn information and monetize and participate in the economy with that information across 4 years such that you walk across the stage with 0 debt at the end of your college experience, maybe that should be a goal that I have for like the education team and like part of the message that we talk to teachers and faculty and other students about. Thumbs up if you think that that's a reasonable idea. That sounds, I think I would hire those people to join my team. Entrepreneurial, bootstrapping, scrappy about these things. So anyway, the idea of multiple people using one workspace to accelerate the build-out time. I'll send you all these slides as well as we're coming. I only got 3 minutes left, but I'll end with some limitations of vibe coding. The idea that you do need to know a little bit about how product building works in order to figure this stuff out. A lot of the times you'll get errors that are unfamiliar to you. So the idea that you can screenshot that in Replit and drag it into the interface and say, hey, I don't know what this actually is and how to fix it. The same tool that you're using to build out your application is the same Replit agent that you can ask questions to in order to get unblocked and unlocked so that you don't have to wait until a human being can help you. You can literally use a Replit agent to get unstuck and build at the same time. In terms of complexity and technical debt, I think debugging is probably the most useful skill on this list, and learning how to do that if you're not technical is a lot of trial and error and is a lot of time you'll spend with agent learning the things that traditional engineers and traditional folks in computer science learn in class. All right, vibe coding when it needs guardrails. We typically talk to technical people about some of these things, but what I'll say is like security. There's security scans before you publish, and then there's validations and things that you should know from a user interface perspective, like what's appropriate and what's not. We, on a platform side, do as much as we can from a Replit perspective to protect the users and to protect the builders, but there's some common sense and some things that you also have a little bit of responsibility for as well. With that, I'll just say thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate all of your ears and are excited to communicate and collaborate with some of you if any of these ideas resonate. Thank you guys so much.